Hey guys, Sarah here from Work Life Glue. Today I'm going to be doing a daycare related video. So many of you on this channel and our other channel, Marita Glue, have asked in the past how I run my interviews, any tips I have for interviews, and that kind of thing. So I thought I would just do a whole video dedicated to this. Now this is a warning, this is going to be a very detailed, long video because as I was preparing for it, I realized there's so many things I wanted to say. Things to do before interviews, things to do during, red flags and stuff like that. So I just wanted to cover it all in one video to be as helpful as possible. So let's jump in right away and get started. So I just want to preface by saying I'm no expert. I've only been a childcare provider for about 2 years now, and I'm no expert, but I do have a group of amazing families. I have learned a lot. I have terminated care before and stuff like that. I've dealt with issues with parents and things like that, and so I feel like I am a lot better equipped to answer these questions now than I was 2 years ago, and I feel that my interview process has been really solid pretty much from the start, and now I know a lot of things to look for and some tips along the way. So I'm no expert, and obviously every area is different. Some people can be pickier than others. Some things might not work in your area, some things might not work in your home, some things you may just not want to do, but this is what works for me, and that's what I'm sharing. So before you even get to the interview portion of the enrollment process, I think it's very important to already have a very solid website set up that you can send parents to. Now I use Wix.com and I do pay for a domain name. It's just my daycaresname.com. So that it's very professional. It looks really nice. It was really easy to set up. You don't need to know like HTML and stuff. Like, even though I do know all that, I wanted something really easy that looks nice and it's bright, it's colorful, it's professional. I have pictures of me, I have pictures of my space, I have pictures of the kids playing, to kind of give parents an idea of what my program's like. And the reason I recommend having a really solid website is so that parents already have a good sense that they want to enroll after they see your website. So you don't have to waste your time interviewing families that maybe your philosophy doesn't work, or you're not in the right area, or your hours don't work. So just make sure you have a lot of stuff on your website, like your philosophy, if you're more play-based, if you're more structured, if you offer a curriculum, if you don't, if you only take infants and toddlers, if you only take preschool age, if you don't do school age, whatever it is that you enroll, make sure that's on your website. Have pictures, have descriptions, show some sample meals so parents know what they're getting, talk about your curriculum if you use one, and then also I would include a sample schedule so parents know kind of what happens in the day and can decide if that would work well for their child, if that's what they're looking for, and just try to give as much detail. I wouldn't put your handbook or your policies or your rates or things like that on there, just because those can change, and because you know, you want to entice parents to want to enroll, and then you don't want to tell them all the details up front, in my perspective, just because maybe you're a little bit more expensive than they want, but if you show them the value you're providing, they may be willing to pay for that once they realize what your rates are later on when they talk to you, if that makes sense. And then another thing I always do before the actual interview is I try to set up a phone interview. And I have a phone interview template I use, and I will link that below so you guys can kind of see what kind of questions I ask. But basically I do this so that I'm not wasting my family's time with a family that I already know their hours don't work, or they don't like my rates or whatever. I'm not spending an hour at night when I could be spending time with my family. I'm getting the phone interview out of the way, and then if it works out well, then we'll meet. And I try to schedule the phone interview during nap time, so I'm not trying to talk to the kids and talk to someone. It just doesn't work well, and I don't think it's very professional. But I also don't schedule them at night just because that is precious family time, and I only want to sacrifice some of that family time if it means I might enroll a family that I really love already. And some things I try to talk about during the phone interview are the things that I don't like to talk about. So like rates, my days off, things like that. I just get it out of the way at the phone interview so I don't have to worry about it when they come. I'm not a salesperson. I'm introverted. I'm pretty shy, but like I come across as very confident and professional when I'm speaking to families, but I don't really like to discuss those things in my home and have my kids around and stuff. So I like to get those out of the way ahead of time. That way, if your rate is too high or your days off won't work or something like that, then you don't have to bother setting up an in-person interview. So if parents have seen my website, we've talked on the phone, and everything seems to be a good fit, my hours work, days off, rates, all that sounds good to them, then we will schedule the in-person interview. And I try to always schedule those when my husband will be here, just for safety reasons and because he can kind of help watch our children. And just, I think it's important for the parents to meet everyone in your household. Personally, just, I know if I were a parent enrolling my child in somebody's daycare, I would want to meet their spouse, if their spouse will be around my child, just for, you know, peace of mind, and just because I think it's important. And then I also want to make sure their kids will be there, at least the ones that will be enrolling and or might potentially be enrolling, and have both parents there, because you want to see how the kids are, you want to see how the parents and the kids interact, how the parents interact together, and stuff like that. I think it's important to meet everybody who you will be dealing with on like a daily basis. Okay, before I get into how my interview is actually set up when parents come, I want to just have this huge disclaimer and this huge notice that I think it's super important for providers to know that it's more importantly that you are interviewing the parents than the parents are interviewing you. If the parents have gone through all the steps of reading your website, getting to know you on the phone, and really like your program, chances are it's just gonna seal the deal when they come. But I think it's very important that the provider have the final say. The provider is the one that's interviewing the families, because you, at the end of the day, as the provider, are the one who knows your group of kids, you know your group of parents, you know your policies, you know what you like, what you don't like, you know how you communicate and how you want to communicate with parents, you know what kind of personalities work well with yours and which don't. And so it's really important that you are the one interviewing them more than they're interviewing you. Now, obviously, the parents want to meet you, feel comfortable with you, and all that kind of thing, but they shouldn't have the final say if they enroll. That should be up to the provider, because you're looking out for your group and your business. And this was kind of hard for me in the beginning because I just wanted to make sure I got people in the door, but I've just learned when a family doesn't mesh well with your program, it can be really difficult for you spending your days with a child who maybe just doesn't work well with your group, or parents who don't actually abide by your policies, or you just don't have the right communication styles. I think there's a good daycare out there for every kid, but it may not be yours. And so you just want to really make sure when you're interviewing, you're not nervous like, oh, I hope they want to interview and I hope they want to enroll. You're more confident like, you know, I really hope they want to enroll, but I also really hope that I want to enroll them. And I usually have a really good sense after they've left of like, yep, that's not going to work, or yep, I definitely want them to enroll, I really hope they sign up. And that's not to sound like arrogant or anything, but I just think you really have to protect your business and your group of children, and you want to have the best fit possible. Obviously you need an income coming in, but it's usually not worth it to enroll a family if they're not a good fit, because you're going to end up regretting it, and you could spend a couple more weeks trying to find the right family who will be the perfect fit, and then you won't regret it. Now, based on that, there are some red flags I kind of look for, and a lot of it's just kind of gut feeling, but there are certain red flags that I would say are just like an automatic no. So, and one of those is if the child has no respect for the parents and the parents lack control over their children. That's a big red flag to me. I don't want to be the child's parent. I don't want to be the one who always has to be the bad guy. I want parents who parent their children similar to the way I discipline and control the environment in my daycare. I don't want permissive parents who just let their kids do whatever they want, because that will mean the child will be really hard and have a hard time fitting in my daycare, because that's not how I run it. And that's just me personally, but I would say if the child lacks respect for the parent, they're probably going to lack respect for you as well. If the family shows up late or doesn't come at all and isn't very good about communicating why, that's an automatic no to me. I would probably not reschedule it depending on their excuse. But if they're 10 minutes late too, that says a lot. I mean, that wouldn't be an automatic no, but it really does say a lot that maybe they're not respectful of your time, maybe they wouldn't be on time to pick up their child, or they would be early to drop them off, and things like that that you don't want to run into. If parents are super eager to get in and they don't even really want to listen to what you have to say about your program, they may be hopping daycares and they just need to get somewhere and they don't really care what your program is like. That's not the kind of family I want in my program. And that might mean that their child got kicked out of daycare for some reason, or the family got kicked out because maybe they had issues or they weren't paying on time or something like that. I want families who are really excited about my daycare and want to get in because they like me, they like my program, they like my home, and they really want their kids to be there. Another red flag is just glossing over past daycare history when I ask things like, you know, what are you currently doing for care? Why are you looking for care? If they just kind of brush it off, that may mean they were terminated, or they may have been difficult to deal with, or maybe they just left, they didn't give a 2-week notice. I try to ask a lot of follow-up questions to things like that just to kind of read between the lines. You don't always know, you probably won't know a lot of the details, but you try to get the best answers you can to try to figure out what might have happened in the past. And I don't want to enroll a family who's been terminated from multiple daycares, because chances are they're not going to do well here either. And then just another red flag is that they just don't mesh with you. Some people just don't get along well with other people. It's just personality. Maybe it's the way they communicate, maybe it's the way they convey themselves, maybe they just seem to have a completely different lifestyle than you that you know you wouldn't want bringing into your daycare. Whatever it is, if you just get a really bad vibe, I don't think it's probably a family you want to enroll. And that there may be nothing wrong with the family. They may be a great family, but maybe just not for your daycare. Maybe they'd fit well somewhere else. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're just looking out what's best for your family, your business, and your children and your other families, because their children will be around the other children, and you want to enroll families that you think would have similar styles of parenting and philosophies on life and things like that. So you just want to be really careful and selective of the types of kids and families you're bringing in. And as I'm saying this, it comes out as it sounds bad, but I just think you should really be selective for the sake of everyone, and you just want to have a good vibe with the family when they leave, if you're going to enroll them. So the way I conduct my interview, the families come in, they come to the front door, which families, when they're in my care, they come to the back, just the way our house is laid out. It just makes more sense to have them come to the front. And we shake hands, introduce ourselves. I try to get to know the kids' names and the parents' names if I haven't memorized that already. And then I just give them a little overview of what the night will be like. I say we're going to do a tour first so you guys can see the house and the layout and where your kids would be sleeping and all that kind of stuff. And then we will sit down and have a little presentation, and then we can go over questions. That way they kind of know what to expect. So we start, I show them the dining room, the kitchen, the living room, and I explain like we only watch TV in here during these times. And so as I'm going around the house, I'm kind of explaining our day, and I'm explaining this is where your kids would put their stuff. This is where the calendar is, and you can take a look at the calendar. This is where we do crafts, and I kind of go over what kind of crafts we might do and what times we do them. So they're getting a sense of not just the space, but how we use the space, when we use each space, and stuff like that. And then the kids are free to kind of take toys out as well. I don't care about that as long as, depending on the age, they're not left alone. But if they're older siblings or whatever, I'm okay with them playing while the parents and I go talk. But other than that, we just kind of walk around the house. Takes about 5 minutes. Just kind of get to know each other, small talk, and pointing out the features and benefits of my program throughout the space. Then we go and sit in my living room. And what I do, I have, as a former teacher and someone who I am not the best at speaking with people. I don't like small talk and stuff like that, and it does give me some anxiety. I like to have a visual aid to help guide me, because I can tend to ramble, especially if I'm nervous. So I use this website called emaze.com. It's free. I just made a really simple presentation, and I hook it up from the laptop to our TV, which looks really professional, but it's actually really easy to do. Or you could just have your computer sitting on the coffee table or dining table or wherever you are and have parents look at that, or have some kind of printout to give to them. For me personally, this just works really well to have something to look at and to guide our conversation. In my presentation, I have some of the main things that I think are important to talk about. I don't go over every policy, we would be there forever, but I go over our sickness and illness policy and how strict I am, and I give examples of when I've sent kids home and when I haven't. And just, you know, talk about respect and not medicating your child before coming and stuff like that. I talk about our meals and I give them a sample menu so they can see what kind of meals I offer. We talk about opening and close times and my policies regarding late pickups and things like that. And what's worked really well for me, since I don't have a late fee, I don't have a fee for parents coming late. At the interview, I always say, I don't have a late fee, and this is because my parents really respect me and my time. And if it became an issue where they were chronically late, we would sit down and talk about how this daycare probably isn't the best fit. And just me saying that, I've never had an issue with it. I've had a couple of late pickups only during like emergency situations with weather and stuff like that. So I'd highly recommend saying something like that if you don't have a late fee, or just be really blunt and honest. And I try to be as transparent as possible with parents in the interview too about why I have these kind of policies. We talk about nap time and how every child lays down. We talk about my rates and what's included and the benefits of all of that. We talk about my days off and how my calendar works when I give out the calendar with days off and things like that, so parents know. And I talk about how I communicate with parents, so that we have a newsletter. Parents can text me throughout the day. I put daily photos and descriptions on a private Facebook group and stuff like that. So I try to give them a really good overview of my program in a little more detail than the website has, and then this allows them to ask questions along the way. At the very end of that presentation, I have a slide that says my expectations, and I think this is really important because I want parents to view me as a professional and as someone that does have a say in what happens in my daycare, and that it's not just a one-sided thing that they get to do what they want. And I say that my house will be dirty sometimes, it will be messy, there's kids that play here. I am not a babysitter, I'm a child care provider, this is my business, and sometimes I have to make really hard decisions that may be best for my business or my family, but may not be the best for one specific child, and that I want parents to know that going into it, that I'm looking out for what's best for the group, but I can't make everybody 100% happy all the time. It's just impossible, and so sometimes there will be decisions made that may not make one particular family super happy, but it's just what I have to do. And I think saying that up front really makes parents view me in a professional way, and also sets them up so that if I do have a switch to a policy or I have to stick by something, they already have seen that coming because I talk about it in the interview. So at this point, it's probably been about like 25-30 minutes, maybe longer, depending on how many questions they've asked along the way. Then I ask the parents if they have any questions, and a lot of times they don't because I've already gone over everything, but they may ask just various questions about, you know, what do I offer days off for the families and stuff like that, just specific little questions, and I just answer them. And then after I've answered their questions, then I have a whole sheet of questions I ask them, and I'll also leave that in the description below so you guys can have some sample questions of what to ask families at interviews. And I think this is a really important time to get to know the specific family's needs and style of parenting and expectations. So just some sample questions I ask them are, how do you discipline your child? I ask where they work. I ask what time do you typically have to leave for work? When do you get there? When do you get off? And when would you pick your child up? And then I ask, like, if your child was sick and needed to be picked up, who would pick them up? How long would it take them to get here? What is your plan if I have to close unexpectedly? What is your plan for days that you're expecting that I'll be closed? I just really want to have a sense that they have a good backup plan, so that I don't have to feel bad if I'm throwing up or my child is throwing up and I have to close. I ask about the child's sleep schedule. How do they go to sleep at night? Do they have a routine? I ask about foods they like, dislike, just to get a sense to know the child. What are things they like to do? Can they get dressed by themselves? Are they potty trained depending on the age? How do they like to be soothed? I ask if they have any health concerns. I ask about previous daycare history. And then I ask them questions like, how would you let me know if there was an issue in my care? What if there was something I did that you didn't like, or you know, I handled something a certain way and you didn't like that? How would you bring that up to me? Would you bring it up at pickup? Would you text me? Would you call me? What would you do? And then we kind of talk about what my preferences are for that kind of thing. And I hope that nothing would happen like that, but it's just nice to know, even for little tiny things. how we would communicate. And then I ask if they have any concerns, like what is your greatest concern about switching daycares or starting at a new daycare? You know, what are your fears? What are you excited for? Things like that. And then if it's an infant I'm enrolling, I go over guidelines for that, about sleep, about feeding. They need to be able to take a bottle. They need to be able to fall asleep on their own. Can or can they not be swaddled depending on the age and the type of swaddle. And I have a whole printout I give them as well, which I will also link below for you guys. That really helps set those guidelines, because especially in Minnesota we have very strict guidelines about sleep and feeding and things like that. And when you have a multi-age group, I can't just be feeding the child all day. I have to be able to put the child down and work with the other kids as well. So it's important that the parents really work with the infant beforehand on those kinds of things. So then after all my questions are answered and all their questions are answered, I give them a little folder with a sample menu and When I Play I Am Learning handout, which I'll also leave below. It's my philosophy that we learn through play, so we do a lot of hands-on stuff. So I just want to give them kind of an idea of what kinds of things they're learning when they do Play-Doh and painting and imaginative dramatic play and stuff like that. So I send that with them, and then I also have pre-filled out a little sheet with a rundown of my rates, the child's name, the child's birth date, pay days, like when they need to pay, what days the child will be coming, the hours, and then also tells about the holidays and paid days off, so that when they're talking about it, they can kind of have all those kind of details in front of them to make the best decision for their family. And then also some business cards, so if they want to hand them out or put them on their fridge or whatever, they can. So at that point, after all of that, it's usually about an hour, and then I just say, if you guys decide you want to enroll, let me know. I'm conducting other interviews, but if you think this would be a good fit for you, let me know, and then I will get back to you on if the opening is still available. And in the back of my head, I usually already know if I would want them to enroll or not. A lot of times I would, just because I have done all those screening processes in advance. And so I leave it in their court, and then they usually will call me the next day or whatever and say I want to enroll. And then often I'll say, awesome, I can't wait, this is the next steps. But sometimes I say, you know, I'm currently still interviewing, I'll get back to you at this date. Or I just say, you know, I think, I don't think my daycare is the best fit for your family or whatnot, depending. Or maybe they don't want to enroll, and that's fine too. So I hope this video helped you guys. It was very detailed, very in-depth. Make sure you check out those resources below as well. I hope you find them helpful. If you have any other daycare related questions or video ideas, leave them in the comments below and I will try to answer them. And thank you guys so much for sticking to the end, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.